In today's video, I'm going to share something that I don't believe a lot of people or enough people are really talking about when it comes to spiritual growth and manifestation and personal development. And that is how to essentially break free from what I call the self-help trap. Because there is 100% a trap when it comes to the world of self-help. And I've been in it, I've escaped it multiple times. It's something that is a little bit sticky and can keep attracting you back. And so in today's video, I want to share with you some key points around how to notice that you're in the trap and what it is, and like why something like personal development and self-help could even be deemed a trap, right? Like why in the world we would even call it something like that. And this is an important video for me to make, especially along my own journey, as I embark on monetizing my YouTube channel and getting my work out there in a more visible and social way, because I believe that there is so now more than ever, right? We are exposed to so much information, and it is very tempting to firstly get on this hamster wheel of just learning and consuming and consuming and consuming, right? And this is part of my personal journey of really making a conscious effort and decision to go from and shift my identity. You'll often hear me talk a lot in my channel about being able to access the energetics and the leverage points of change. And one of the highest leverage points of change is your identity. And so for me, I made a conscious decision to shift my identity from a consumer to a creator and to start to create content out on social media, because for the past, like almost 20 years of my career, I have not required or needed, thank God, touch wood, social media to advance my business, to market it, etc. And so, but now, like, I really want to get out there. Like, I feel the call, I feel the pull. And even if this is not about you getting out onto social media, this is just me explaining that, knowing now that I am a content creator, right? Like, my identity has shifted from a consumer to a content creator. One of my identities, being a lifelong learner, will never cease to exist, right? It will always be there. I will always be a lifelong learner and want to consume and want to learn, and I will still continue learning. But one of the traps of the self-help world is that you learn and learn and learn and learn on a never-ending cycle, and you never integrate, and you never get off the learning cycle and into the integration part of it. And that's really dangerous, because what it means is that you are just consuming, right? Like a glutton, consuming, and just like piling on more and more and more and more information, but you're never really learning. You're never really integrating and then taking action potentially, and then experimenting with it, and then seeing like, okay, does this work for me? Is this true for me? Most importantly, like, is this really what's aligned and true for me? That's why a lot of my work is about aligned living, right? One of my proprietary programs, online programs, is called Aligned Living, because it teaches you how to get into alignment with yourself and what is true for you, not all the projections and expectations that you have, taken on throughout your lifetime from parents and society and friends and mentors and whatever, who else, that you are operating from, that don't necessarily have anything to do with your path and your unique contribution that you have here on this planet. So that's one of the components or the pieces of this vicious cycle that can happen, that you might even be in right now, where you are just constantly consuming and consuming without necessarily integrating. Now, this can also often lead to information overload and overwhelm. And in my last video I just did on polyvagal theory, trauma response, right? It was just how we respond to trauma collectively, our collective consciousness right now, as of making this video, 2025, with all the wars and all the fucking chaos that's going on out there. We are 150,000 million % in survival mode as a collective. We are in our sympathetic collective nervous system response, which is all about fight and flight. People want to fight each other. They want to continue to create separation and division, or flee, right? Like completely be like, fuck, I can't take this anymore. And then when it escalates, because when we can't take it, when we don't want to watch, when we don't want to fight anymore, then we get into the even like harder part of our nervous system reaction, or the more, I would say, like desensitized and the more troubling state of neurological and physiological wiring, which is along the dorsal ventral pathway. And the dorsal ventral pathway is where we literally feel hopeless, helpless, where we shut down, where we withdraw completely, where we potentially feel depressed, suicidal, all the things, right? So that's where it's like this elevated parasympathetic response. A lot of people talk about the parasympathetic response being rest and digest, and like, yes, those are the physiological processes that are occurring, along that pathway. But ultimately, like, a prolonged response and experience in that pathway is very detrimental to your overall well-being. And so ultimately, what we all want to come back to collectively, or even individually, right? Like when we can't do a lot about the collective, which, as Gandhi used to say, right? Like we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. That's the only way, because whatever, from a quantum physics point of view, like it's all ultimately like a holographic field, and it is a complete reflection of our inner state, etc. And we are all ultimately just one source, right? Energy experiencing itself in an individuated form. That's other videos you can go look on, when I talk about quantum manifestation and quantum physics and how it, through the manifestation through the lens of quantum physics is basically what I want to say about that. But this is about like getting trapped in, right? Like learning about all of these very differing self-help systems and philosophies and all of the things. And in my work, what really differentiates it is that I'm about transcending identities, right? Which is one of the highest leverage points of change. I'm about transcending anything that is divisive and that creates any type of separation and perpetuation of the polarity, which is like the right and the wrong and the good and the bad and the better and the worse. And yes, I totally agree and know and believe that we need contrast, which is the duality, right? The polarity. However, right, when we live in that polarity for too long, and when we attach to either side of that polarity, and when we then identify with our roles and our masks and our communities or any label for too long, and we get too attached and identified with that, we create separation, we create division, we create individuation, which there's nothing wrong with, because we are all unique individuals. And I teach people how to access, leverage, and monetize their unique contribution in life, right? So that they can experience more fulfillment and joy and ease. But when you identify too much to certain things and you start to get into the judgment of, right, whether this is right and wrong and good and bad and better and worse, and this is, my thing is better than yours, or mine is, that's when like all hell breaks loose, literally and figuratively. We are experiencing that right now. And so from a learning perspective, when we're in information overload and we're overloading our nervous systems with too much information and too much identification with that information, that is when we start to get out of the safety zone of our nervous system, right? That pathway, which is the ventral vagal nerve. And we start escalating up to the sympathetic, and then into the dorsal vagal nerve, which is the parasympathetic, which is the freeze. So that progression is something that I would really encourage you to start to become more aware of, is that green zone, right? The ventral vagal zone of safety and mindfulness and feeling like we are connected with each other, right? Healing. Actually, because why are we all into self-help? Because we want to heal ourselves. We want to develop ourselves. We want to evolve ourselves. But actually, healing collectively or individually only happens when we are in community, when we are connected with ourselves, with our soul state, which is what I call which is the highest leverage point of change for me, because soul state is ultimately connected to source, right, which is the animator of all things. And it transcends any, anthropomorphic religion, identity, sex, race, etc. Right? Like we are all just ultimately energetic beings having a human experience, and individuating with all of our things. So it's like once you yes, those identities and the values that they have and the beliefs that you have and all the associated beliefs and skills and all the things that make you are important, but only to a certain extent, right? And only to a certain point. Once you kind of not know yourself and transcend yourself, right? Transcend the ego self, and you realize that we are all one, we are all interconnected. You just have a different way of being in the world, and a different way of connecting, and a different way of engaging, and a different way of experiencing life and your results. And it is as if by magic that everything just comes with ease and joy and glory and fulfillment. And it's like, even when the shit hits the fan, and even when there's wars, and even when there's all the things, you are you've got your center, right? You feel aligned, you feel at peace, you feel mindful, you feel grounded, you feel okay. You don't feel this massive wobble, because you're not identified with the polar opposites of essentially energy, right? That's why I teach energy intelligence. And you're not identified with those polar opposites. And so you're constantly collapsing what I call the charge, right, of those opposites. And when you collapse the charge, that is truly when you have insight in the moment, and when you're able to evolve to the next illusion of separation and division and individuation. And that's the journey. One of my best friends literally just sent me a photograph. I think she took a photograph of it, or the actual piece of paper that I drew this chart on. And so I'm going to do another video for you on this, because there's literally a diagram that shows how these polar opposites collapse, and then we evolve to the next level. And then there's another little mini illusion. And when you keep identifying with the complementary opposite charges of energy, right, what essentially happens, literally and figuratively, from the micro to the macro, right? Because when I talk about charges, I'm talking about the right, the wrong, the good, the bad, the better, the worse, positive, negative, etc. Right? Those black, white, day, night, none of them, because day does not exist right? Without knowing night, and without night happening to the same degree as day is happening right now. So you can say to me, oh, Carrie, it's like absolutely, or I could say to you, it's absolutely 100% daytime right now. There's, it's a little bit overcast and cloudy, but like it's day, emphatically it's day. And I could argue my point, and I'm attached to the fact that there's daylight here and that it is categorically not nighttime where I am experiencing my reality. But hi, like we all know that if fucking across the world, like someone is experiencing the same degree of nighttime, like, sleeping cozy in their bed and like there's stars and darkness and like no sunlight coming in. And they could be like, well, my reality is that it's completely nighttime right now. And so you can start to hear like how ridiculous we all actually are when we attach and identify to our other identities and our other realities, right, that those identities ultimately make up, because that's what our realities are ultimately made up of, is just who we think we are, what we ultimately think we believe as a result of that identity, what we ultimately value as a result of those identities, and therefore the values actually drive the belief, and then what we are then able, right, capable and skilled or not to do, and then ultimately what behaviors we take and actions we take as a result of the things that we now are skilled in and know how to do, and that results in our reality that we find ourselves in. And then we like wonder why our reality collectively or individually is compiled or filled with shit that we actually don't want, or that is like not working out for us, but there we are upholding our identities and all the things that we value and that we think is true and that is right, and it's, or that like your way is wrong and my way is right. It's such a fucking like comedy actually when you start to transcend all of that, all of the judgment of it all, and you just see it for what it is, and you start to, and so this is why when we talk about like all this information, all this, like it's such, there's so many interesting points of view, right? Like that is one of the best lines someone has ever taught me, is everything is just an interesting point of view. Just an interesting point of view. It's just a point of view. It's not the right point of view. It's not the wrong point of view. Like, my religion, your religion, no religion, like it's just a point of view, actually. Like like at the end of the day, like when it boils down to the essence of everything, which is ultimately energy, like there is no religion, there is no race, there is no right, there is no wrong, there is no black, there is no white, there is no day, there is no night, even. So it's like, it's when we transcend that and we get back to the energetics of it and realize that like, okay, cool, like there's no reason for like absolute conflict and war and, just like treating people like shit and, or whatever, like it's unnecessary to a large degree. And we could be with each other in such a very different way. What does it look like? Is it possible? I believe it's totally possible. I have no idea what it looks like, but I have glimpses, and I'm sure you have glimpses of it, which is why you love developing yourself and self-help, and why you're learning, and because you want to know, like you're curious, you're wondering about like, well, what else is possible? Why do we have to have the state of affairs that we do? Surely like life and reality like doesn't have to be this fucking doom and gloom and hellhole that a lot of people find themselves in. Like, thank God, luckily, like, that is not my reality. But sometimes it does. I have all the anxiety, all the doubt, all the fear, all the blah, 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 because we are, right, energetic beings having a human experience. And as human beings, we have to transcend a lot of the egos and a lot of the programming that we've come in with to evolve, and to evolve on a collective level. So we individually 100% should be and have to be like, and I know, like, smack me, because I'm usually the one saying like, we don't, as soon as you hear should, have to, must, need to, or to, that's the sign that like someone's projecting shit onto you. But, and we don't, like in reality, we don't have to do any of that. But it is one of the only ways to raise collective consciousness and to change the external collective experience, by changing ourselves. Like that just is what it is, because we are all interconnected. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to, learn and do all the self-help stuff and investigate and grow yourself. Like, no, but it's fun. And it's like, I believe it's ingrained in us, right? So irrespective of like why you're doing the self-help journey and the spiritual investigation and learning all the stuff, just be careful of the trap of taking on too much, right? Like over consuming and never actually integrating and creating anything with it, becoming overwhelmed by it and just like taking on so much and not really knowing like, what's true for you and what's actually in alignment for you. Because when it comes to what is true for you, you will know that. I can't tell you what's true for you, right? When you tune in, tap in, and turn on to your soul state more often, right? Which is what I believe is your highest leverage, the highest leverage point of change. If you want to change anything in your life, you've got to tune in, tap in, and turn on to what I call your soul state. And if you don't do that on a regular basis, you will succumb to all of these external bodies and people of information and experience the overload and the overwhelm and get your nervous system into a complete tiz, because you are going to continuously depend on external sources of information and truth, which is not. It's not true. It's all just an interesting point of view, right? And when it comes to spiritual awakenings, most of the time, most people are transcending, they are questioning who they've always been, all their identities and all the beliefs and all the values that they've subscribed to or injected from others. And that can be a very dismantling process when you start to like question your identity and your life and like your reality, and like, is this really all there is? And is this all that I've attained? And is this who I've married? Is this, are these really my children? Have I really brought these beings up that are such little shits? Or is this my path that I don't have a partner, or whatever it is that you are experiencing? Or is this the only amount of money that I've been able to achieve or create? Or is this amount of debt really mine? Right? Like, whatever it is that you're navigating and want to change, right? And want to, whether it's via a self-help journey or not, spiritual awakenings happen when you start to question, right? Because and I've gone into this in detail in the video of like what it really takes when you have a spiritual awakening. So you can watch that one as well. But like, people often start to seek more information and more guidance from the outside. And all I want to say is that if that guidance is not leading you back to you, it's not really guidance. It's not really like, true green flag go, because we have everything that we require within us, right? It's about stopping the learning and the consuming, and it's about starting to remember. So remember, like, source energy is individuating. And so when you remember, like, you are literally going back to source, to what you ultimately are, and to what we all are at our energetic, like, essential being. Now, obviously, you are going to want to continue learning and growing and evolving and consuming content. I still do. I love learning. At any one point in time, you can always find me learning at least 2 new courses, getting certified in something. And so it's not about stopping learning altogether, right? It's recognizing the part at which it can start to sabotage you and become a trap. The point at which it could potentially take you more away from yourself and your essence, and further down the line of depending on other people and other sources. And just be kind and gentle to yourself, because it is a journey of self-discovery, right? There are no right answers. No one has all the answers. You are, like, each of us are remembering the answers and who we truly are. And it is a beautiful process that can be a little bit wonky at times, right? So just be kind and just give yourself grace that, like, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just like, be aware along the journey and be true to you. Make sure that you are living aligned, that you are not adopting and injecting the points of views and the value systems and other things from other people, that information is actually just helping you to learn more about who you are at your essence, right? And to take these identities, and look at them and be like, are they actually serving me? Like, is this who I want to be? And not like install new identities that are just different identities, right? That have different judgments and different beliefs and values associated, right? Like, it has to transcend all of that and help you get back to what I call your soul state and the essence of who you are, because that's where, like, really and truly you will experience the most fulfillment and joy and peace and just, like, ease and speed and consistency with creating and actualizing the life of your dreams, which, like, who doesn't want that? Now, I've touched on this, but another trap obviously is when you get into self-help and you become all spiritually enlightened and, like, you have this newfound awareness and you suddenly start to have your spiritual awakening, it can feel, trust me, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, like you are superior and you are now awake and everyone else is asleep. And it is true. That is a fact, right? Like, you are now more awake and have more light. You are more enlightened in the moment, insight in the moment, right? Literally, because you are collapsing more charges of judgment and of polarity. And other people are still stuck in their revolution of those charges. And so when you are stuck in the revolution of your charges, the revolutions, literally and figuratively, right, create wars and chaos and unrest and blah, blah, blah. So we're always looking to collapse the charge, right, to collapse the judgment of right, wrong, good, bad, better, worse, yours, mine, etc., and have insight in the moment. And when you stop those revolutions, you have an evolution and you jump to the next level, the next illusion, right, of opposites, and it's so on and so forth. If you want me to do a video with my little flip chart of the diagram, let me know in the comments, and I'll do one. We'll do a video just on that. So what we don't want to do, right, is get up high on a pedestal of our, like, a pedestal of judgment, of being like, okay, well, I'm spiritual and I'm awake and you're asleep and you're down here, because that's just going to set up a revolution. And it's going to lead you nowhere, trust me. So rather, like, it's just about being aware. and awakening more and more of your awareness as to what's really going on with you, with the world, with everything, etc. And even just to notice the division, the polarity, the revolutions, other people, even notice it within yourself, the identification, the need for the ego wanting to attach to like a right or a wrong point of view. Just notice that. Like the first step of my 5 A's of alignment is awareness. You have to become aware of where your energy is leaking and where your energy is out of alignment, right? Then only once you've awakened can you then address anything. And so, and then only when you address it can you then align it. And only once you've aligned it can you then anchor it into, right, like with rituals and like, get the energy like moving and the momentum going, right? Abraham Hicks talks a lot about, building the momentum. And then it's really about, once you've been able to anchor it, it's then about being able to actualize it into a new reality, because now you have, you've rewired all of the programming and all of the like source code, right? And that, because remember that like the now environment that you experience, your reality right now that you see in front of you, is old energy. And so in order to actualize a new reality, I often talk about actuality versus reality, right? Like your reality is like old energy. It's over here. It's like, it's manifested already based on all of your old programming, intentions, whatever goal setting you do, which I'm not a believer in goal setting. And so anyway, we're going off track for this video, but really and truly, it's about becoming aware of all that's happening, right? Like where you are attached to your judgment and, to the right and the wrong and the good and the bad, because that's setting you up on a pedestal. So even if it's not like I'm spiritual and you're not, I'm awake and you're not, whatever it is, you will have lots of points of views that you've attached and identified to, right? Which often originate from an identity, right? Which often, example, like the most common examples of that are religion, are your sex, are your, if your marital status, your leadership, work title, career title, and then religions, I mentioned that, like my favorite one, just because I've been both 1,000 million times and everything in between, like the carnivore, the vegan, right? Like the total polar opposites have now emerged onto the dietary nutrition scene. And it's hysterical because they are totally complementary opposites. So yeah, like, if you find yourself getting worked up, because that's the signal, right? That's awareness from an energetic point of view, that your nervous system has now shifted into another gear and you are now fighting and flighting according to how you feel about, right, like this point of view, either being right or wrong, or that this is better or worse, whatever. There's a judgment. There's an impending judgment based on a complementary opposite charge there. So from the micro to the macro, people, like we are on a mission to collapse the charges and to find insight in the moment and to get more enlightened, because that's the only way that we can create light, literally, figuratively, individually, and collectively, is when we collapse the charge and we create light in the moment. And it is a beautiful process. I believe that like it is the only, like, energy intelligence. When you learn energy intelligence and you know how to access the energetics, and you become like Neo and Trinity in the Matrix, where you are just like actualizing and manifesting with ease and speed and consistency as if by magic, because you are literally tuning into what is informing us and everything and animating everything on all levels of our being. We interrupt this programming for a tiny little dose, well, not a tiny, a ginormous dose of deliciousness. How beautiful. Little piece of heaven. All right, my beautiful friend, I'm sorry for the scene change and the interruption, but my voice just completely cut out yesterday and it was not possible to continue. So let's pick up from yesterday around the self-help trap and how balancing perceptions, right, balancing the charges, is a key piece of this huge puzzle. Because, and a lot of people gloss over, like, when I talk about collapsing charge and energy management, and they're just like, what the fuck does it actually have to do with like life and reality? Because everything is, I get it. It's physical, it's three-dimensional. It's like you have kids and you have a husband and you have a wife and you have you have things that you do and you get into cars, and it's like, what does this have to do with energy? Well, it's still like, it has to do, everything has to do with energy, because it's informed by energy and animated by energy, and it's just made up of energy. So like, we can't escape that. And what the most important thing about the self-help piece of this, right, is that the self-help industry perpetuates the judgment and the polarity and the duality of like positive thinking, right? And say your affirmations, your positive affirmations, and visualize the ideal you, the the perfect you, as though you are that person. And it just sets up a very unrealistic, imbalanced view of actuality. I talk about actuality versus reality. Actuality is where, like, in actuality, everything is possible because source, right? There is no thing. It is everything, right? Like nothing, it is nothing because no thing has yet been collapsed, right? Like no particle, no physicality has been materialized yet at the source level, right? At your soul state. Everything, there's infinite potentialities and possibilities for what could become something. So it's no thing and everything simultaneously. And when that energy starts to, right, like we start to focus and draw on that energy and think about what we would like, or respond and react to our reality, which is just like a representation of all of the programming that we are operating from, right, consciously and unconsciously, that we more often than not have never really considered or looked at. We are essentially bringing all of that programming and that energy into our reality, but it's only like a reality. It's not the reality. It's not the truth. It's a truth. And at source level, soul state level, there are like infinite truths. And so from, when we look at the world around us, and when we go and seek self-help to evolve and to grow and to evolve, like obviously we want to better ourselves, right? That's why you're going and learning about self-help in whatever way, shape, or form you are, personal, professional development. But when it becomes either an external source as the solution, or like something that you have to do at the behavior level, right, which is one of the lowest leverage points of change, like a habit, and and for example, like say positive affirmations and do your visualization, and sit there and meditate. I mean, meditation like can be very valuable in some aspects, but like saying positive affirmations and visualizing only the like what it is that you want is essentially like operating from a lopsided perception of what is in actuality there, right? Like our like energy cannot be created or destroyed. And so to think that you're only going to seek the positive and avoid the negative is setting yourself up for these revolutions. And that's when you feel lopsided, and when you feel wonky and overwhelmed, and you start to feel the wide spectrum of emotions, because it's ultimately energy in motion. Literally, energy is, like the complementary opposite charges are in motion, revolving around and around and around to try and religate, to try and reunite, to find each other, to collapse, and to ultimately come back to light, which is source energy. So that's the game of optics, right? That we are all, as multidimensional energetic beings having this human experience, that's the game that we are ultimately playing. And when you understand the game of optics, the game of light, right? We are like beings, energetic beings having a human experience. And you can start to work with that light and collapse the charges, right? So when you have negative thoughts and you like, spiraling downhill, you can catch yourself, right? And you can go, oh, okay, like what's positive about the situation that I'm not seeing in this moment? Because remember, there are always equal amounts of complementary opposite charges simultaneously present. It's just that we sometimes, well, most of the time, we don't see them simultaneously. We only either see the positive or the negative. We don't see this, we see the silver lining in hindsight, but that's too late. And what I'm trying to teach you now is like to collapse the charge, to see both sides in the moment, which gives you insight right now, which gets you to essentially create more light and literally enlightenment. And that's when you are more enlightened, you feel lighter, you feel more free, you are not suffering as much because you're not revolving around and around and around. And that's truly when you have these quantum jumps in evolution and your consciousness and your conscious awareness, and you can start to create, manifest, etc., with more ease and speed and consistency. And if that's the end goal of self-help, right? You want to ultimately, like, that's why we're all learning and investing in personal and professional development. But some of it is like missing half the picture. And so that's the trap, right? Is to really like disown the negative and try and only seek support and praise and criticism and positive thinking and not be negative. Like, it's just not possible. Like, we all are going to have negative, bad days. I mean, yesterday, I was a shit show. Like, I couldn't fucking speak. I couldn't breathe. I was like, what? This is hectic and horrible. But like, instead of judging myself and getting into the spiral of the negativity and buying into it and then, building the momentum, like Abraham Hicks talks about, like you start to beat that drum, right? It's like, okay, cool. Like, what else is possible? What else can I do? What's the benefit of this? Like, maybe tomorrow I'll have a different, fresh, new angle that I can provide, blah, 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 right? So like, there is nothing inherently good and bad and right and wrong. And I know you're going to come for me with like all this moral shit, like, okay, well, what about the people that are so evil and so bad? And like, yes, that contrast absolutely exists so that we can know, right, the other side, the opposite sides of it. Because if we were, when we are like, but you have to recognize that like even evil is a judgment of, right, like it is a version of the negative, and the light is a version of the like light. When like people talk about like the light versus dark, I'm not talking about like light as in like source energy where like everything is collapsed and there is no charge. So like when people are talking about like the good guys and the bad guys, right? Like it's all relative. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. Like when, if you had your children, right? If you had children and they were in your house with you and someone came to attack your children and your home, right? And they had guns and they were like, going to come and, destroy you and your family. What how would you act and respond in response to that, right? Like you would do whatever it took and whatever it takes to protect your family and your children. And it might bring some of you to violence. It might bring some of you to different ways, right? Like we all respond. We all have different pathways in which we respond to, right, our nervous systems and our perception of our realities and what is essentially happening. And how we respond and react and behave, because remember, behavior is a lower leverage point of change. It is informed by who we believe we are. So if you have the identity of like being a conflict avoider, right, or a peacemaker, you're going to react relative to that identity. And you're going to believe and have values and have capabilities and potentially physical things around you, like a gun or no gun, because if you're a peacemaker, you might not believe in guns and therefore you might not have a gun. Whereas if you have the identity of, right, like I'm a fighter and I'm loyal and I'm going to, like, then maybe we would find a gun in your home and you would respond and react differently relative to your identities, your values, and the subsequent beliefs and capabilities and actions and behaviors that are therefore driven and informed by who you are identity, right? So like you have to, that's why I'm saying like we have to just like get space from who we think we are and ask ourselves, like, is this working for us? Like, is the majority of the people, like, and that's why it's a sensitive subject. And that's why I said, I may have said this in the beginning of this video, that like some of what I say may offend you, but it also might free you, because it will offend you if you're holding too tightly to your identity and who you think you are, because you've never questioned it and you don't recognize that you are so much more than those identities. You're so much more than your labels. You're so much more than your religion. You're so much more than your race. You're so much more than your sex. You're so much more than all of that, because like energy doesn't have all of that. It transcends all of that. Like your soul doesn't have a sex. It doesn't have a religion. It doesn't have a culture. It doesn't have it's not vegan or like, right? Those are all the things that differentiate us and individuate us and perpetuate the lie that we're all separate. But if we recognize that like we're not all truly all separate, and that like we all actually are one integrated source that's having like this, human experience, then we could potentially make different choices about how we be and how we coexist with each other, right? Like we're not going to be holding fast and steady to our identities and being like, well, no, I'm better than you and I'm more right than yours and my culture is better than your culture. My religion is like, it's just fucking insanity when you think about it like that. And so, and then when you think about all the behaviors that you take, like when you keep watching TV and you keep beating the drum of like, right? And when you, and that's why, people say there's like this big simulation, this big matrix that we are all plugged into. And when you unplug from that, because it's just going to perpetuate, you're just going to see more and more and more. It's going to be reflecting back to you what you believe and who you think you are and what you think is important to you. It's just going to keep reflecting that back to you. You're going to keep attracting. And even if you're resisting it, even if you're saying like, I don't want to see it, I don't want to know about it, I don't want to be like them, I don't want to, whoever, whether it's your mom or your dad or your neighbor or your, the people far away, like doing the bad things that you're judging, it's like the more you resist that and the more you're like, this is it, like these are atrocities, like people are having fucking tantrums. And guess what? They're just going to experience more and more of it because that energy is building. We're beating that drum. So it's like, stop beating the drum of either side and perpetuating the polarity and the duality. Rather, transcend it, evolve from it, instead of like getting into the revolution and joining the revolution, right? Like for me, I don't know about you, I would much rather us evolve than continuously revolve and have revolutions. So I'm going to let that, leave you with that and let that all sink in, because I know it's a lot. I know this was a big video. But the self-help, personal professional development, like it is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is only growing, right? Because we do like collectively, right, like need to continuously evolve. And so I just want you to be equipped and empowered to evolve the fastest, the cleanest, the like most joyful, peaceful, abundant way that's actually possible and available for all of us, right? Not just some of us, all of us. It just will depend on what drum you are beating that will perpetuate the reality that you continuously find yourself in. So I'm beating to a completely different drum. I hope you'll join me. If you're enjoying these videos, please do let me know by liking and subscribing and hitting the notification bell so that you know when the next video lands. And it just helps me know that you're there, like on the other side of the screen, right? And that we are vibing and resonating and that you're responding to what I'm putting out there, because I believe that like when when the majority of us who are transcending and evolving can start to beat the drum together, like we will free ourselves. We will experience like sort of this peace on earth, or just just like a more fun existence, right? Because it's not fun to have wars and revolutions and all that shit. Like, that's not fun. And I don't believe that like our souls came to have this human experience to like experience like just suffering and misery and like, fighting and all that stuff. Like, that is there, right? That's part of the contrast. But there's also so much other stuff that like we can enjoy and we can do together in community. Because remember, like going back to the very beginning of this video, when we are, in the when we are responding to and attached to our identities and our beliefs and our values, right? Relatively speaking, we are going to either fight or flight. Like, remember, like the people, if you're attacked in your own home, like I bet my fucking house that you are going to fight or you're going to flight, right? And or you're going to freeze. You're going to do one of the responses with your nervous system relative to what you believe and what your value system is and who you are, right? And who you are, and all of that can change. So, when we really think about like, well, what's going to stop this insanity of our humanity, it's people stopping buying into all the shit and stop reacting and just believing that like that's all there is and that's only who they are, and being like, okay, wait a minute, like what's actually going to work for everyone, because we all coexist here and there is enough for everyone. But we just have to like consider everyone as one family, one united, integrated, like energetic source, having this like human experience that we're all sharing. And so I don't know, like maybe I'm fucking pie in the sky, naive, Pollyanna, whatever the fuck you want to call me, but I'm going to keep beating that drum and hope for a different possibility and hope for like what else is possible and see if that we can create something different. Because I have seen in my own life and my clients' lives like what it takes to get out of constant negative spirals and cycles, and to not to avoid it, not to disown it, but to embrace it and to own it and to integrate it and to evolve from it and to grow from it, because you can't grow without support and challenge in equal amounts. It's not possible. So we need people and situations and experiences to challenge us, right? To be able, as much as we do them to support us, in order for us to grow. That's just it. Like, that is just like the law of energy and light. So I think I've already told you to like and subscribe. And what is the other thing? Hit the notification bell. So that is it for me today. I love you for being here. I'm excited to see you in the next one. I'm excited to hear what you have to say in the comments. And yeah, bye for now.